The first time it happened, I assumed we'd made an error on deployment, dropped the sinker in the wrong spot, miscalculated the scope, something procedural. That's what you tell yourself, because a 3-ton lateral marker with 40 meters of chain and a cast iron sinker doesn't just relocate itself at 12 nautical miles southeast and park there, steady as a pier bollard, in 60 meters of open water where no mooring exists. But it did, twice in 9 days, and by the third recovery, when we hauled it up with the chain still intact and the sinker still attached 3,000 kilograms of concrete and iron hanging perfectly vertical beneath it, no drag marks, no scoring on the links, our skipper, Henriksen, stopped writing it up as drift. He stopped writing it up at all. I need to explain some things about what I do and who I work with, because the sequence of what happened next only makes sense if you understand how routine this work is supposed to be, how numbingly, physically predictable. My name is Callum Ward. I'm 34. I worked as an able seaman on the MV Stellavag, a 42-meter buoy tender contracted to the Northern Maritime Navigation Authority, which manages aids to navigation across a roughly 11,000 square kilometer zone of the Halsfjord approaches off the west coast of Norway. I've been on the Stellavag for 3 seasons. Before that, I did 2 years on a harbor maintenance tug in Aberdeen and 18 months on a platform supply vessel running out of Stavanger. I'm not an officer. I'm not a specialist. I'm the person who rigs the lifting gear, operates the deck winch, handles chain, inspects hardware, and paints buoys. It's physical work, satisfying in the way that moving heavy things precisely is satisfying. You go out, you service the aids, you put them back, you go home. Our crew is 8. Skipper Henriksen runs the vessel. First mate Dahl handles navigation and paperwork. Bosun Cleven manages the deck operations. Then there's me and 3 other ABs, Mikkelsen, Rui, and Falk, plus the engineer, Strom, who lives in the engine room and comes up mainly to eat. We rotate through 3-week deployments, surfacing around 90 buoys across the zone. Each buoy has a 2-year maintenance cycle. Some we visit more often if the GPS tracker flags position drift or the lantern goes dark. The buoy in question is designated HF-0447. It's a standard 2.4 meter steel lateral marker, port hand, painted red, solar-powered LED lantern on top, AIS transponder, radar reflector. It marks the eastern edge of a deepwater approach channel leading into the Halsfjord commercial port. Its assigned position is 61 degrees 28.3 minutes north, 004 degrees 52.1 minutes east. It was last serviced by us on the 14th of September. Routine job, chain in good condition, lantern functioning, sinker holding. On the 23rd of September, the shore-based monitoring station flagged HF-0447 as off-station. Its AIS transponder was reporting coordinates roughly 12 nautical miles to the southeast, 61 degrees 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees 04.7 minutes east. Out in open water, no channel, no marked feature, no reason for a buoy to be there. Henriksen assumed it had broken free. Happens sometimes chain fails, sinker cracks, and the buoy drifts on the current. You go find it, recover it, remoor it. Standard recovery tasking. We diverted from our regular schedule and headed to the reported position. We found it exactly where the AIS said it would be, floating upright, lantern still flashing its correct 2-second red sequence. Clean, stable, no list. And when we hooked onto the lifting bridle and brought it up with the deck crane, the chain came up taut. 40 meters of 19-millimeter galvanized chain, every link intact. The sinker was at the bottom 3,000-kilo deadweight block, hanging plumb, not dragged, not tumbled, sitting exactly as if someone had placed it there with precision. Clevin said it out loud first. "That's not drift." Henriksen told him to log it as anchor failure, recovered and redeployed. We put it back on station at its correct coordinates, verified the position with differential GPS, and moved on. That was the first time. 9 days later, the monitoring station flagged it again. Same coordinates, 61 degrees, 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees, 04.7 minutes east, 12 nautical miles southeast. Same bearing, same distance. We recovered it again. Chain intact, sinker intact, no scoring, no biological fouling beyond what 9 days in the water would produce. Nothing wrong with it. I remember Mickelson leaning on the rail while we were transiting back to the correct station, smoking, and he said, "Current doesn't carry a 3-ton sinker 12 miles in 9 days, Callum." I didn't have an answer. Neither did anyone else. Henriksen redeployed it, verified position again, logged it as recurrent off-station event, cause undetermined. The shore office sent back a one-line acknowledgement. No follow-up, no investigation team, just a task number for our next recovery if it happened again. It happened again. 7 days. Same coordinates. Exactly the same. Down to the decimal. This time, Henriksen didn't redeploy it. He brought it aboard, secured it on the buoy deck, and told Dahl to signal the shore office that HF-0447 was being returned to depot for inspection. He wanted the chain metallurgically tested. He wanted the sinker weighed. He wanted someone with a degree and a budget to tell him what was happening, because he'd been tending buoys for 22 years across 3 different contracts, and he had never, he emphasized this at dinner that night, never seen a moored aid relocate itself with its ground tackle still attached and undamaged. The depot inspection came back 2 weeks later. Chain, satisfactory, no defects, no elongation, no corrosion beyond normal parameters. Sinker, intact, correct weight, no cracking, buoy hull, no leaks, no damage. Lantern, functional. AIS, functional, reporting accurately. Electronics, no fault found. The report concluded with a single recommendation: redeploy with extended monitoring. So we redeployed it. Henriksen added a secondary GPS logger, a small battery-powered unit zip-tied inside the lantern housing set to record position every 15 minutes and store it locally. If it moved again, we'd have a breadcrumb trail showing how and when. 14 days passed. The AIS stayed on station. Then, on day 15, the monitoring station flagged it off station again. Same coordinates, 61 degrees, 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees, 04.7 minutes east. Same distance, same bearing, like a compass needle returning to north. We recovered it. Henriksen pulled the GPS logger immediately, before we even touched the chain. He brought it to the bridge and downloaded the data on his laptop while Clavin and I hauled up the ground tackle. The chain was intact. The sinker was intact. But the GPS log showed something that made Henriksen close his laptop and sit very still for a long time. He didn't share the data with the rest of us immediately. It was Dahl who told me what it showed 2 days later when we were alongside in port and Henriksen had taken the logger ashore to the Navigation Authority office. The position log showed the buoy sitting perfectly at its assigned coordinates for 14 days. Then, at 0341 on day 15, a single position jump, no gradual drift, no incremental movement, one fix at 61 degrees, 28.3 minutes north, 004 degrees, 52.1 minutes east. Next fix, 15 minutes later, at 61 degrees, 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees, 04.7 minutes east. As if someone had picked it up chain, sinker, everything, and set it down 12 miles away between one reading and the next. Dahl was a careful man, methodical, not prone to speculation, but he said to me, "The only way that data makes sense is if the unit malfunctioned and stopped logging for several days, then recorded the final position, but the timestamps are sequential. The battery voltage curve is smooth. It didn't switch off." I asked him what Henriksen thought. "Henriksen," Dahl said, "has requested permission to place a camera on it. This was unusual. Buoy tenders don't carry surveillance equipment. We carry chain, shackles, paint, and sweat. But Henriksen had apparently gone to the authority's operations director personally and requested a marine-grade camera system, battery-powered, to be mounted on HF-0447 for the next deployment. The request was denied. Budget. Practicality. The operations director told Henriksen it was probably a GPS anomaly and to stop wasting shore office time with equipment requests outside standard protocol. Henriksen didn't argue. He thanked the director and left. Then he bought a camera himself, a marine housing, a wide-angle action camera rated for salt spray, a 60-day battery pack. He spent close to 4,000 kroner of his own money. Cleffen helped him mount it inside a modified radar reflector housing so it would be unobtrusive. Set to record on motion activation with a minimum interval of 30 seconds. We redeployed HF-0447 on the 9th of November. I remember the weather was foul gray, 4-meter swells, the kind of day where you finish the job and go below and your hands shake from the cold for 20 minutes before they're useful again. We put it back on station, verified position. The camera was running, the GPS logger was running. And then Henriksen did something that none of us expected. He told Dahl to plot a course for the other coordinates, the ones where the buoy kept appearing. 61 degrees, 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees, 04.7 minutes east. He wanted to go there and look. There was nothing there. I need to be clear about that. The chart showed open water, 60 to 65 meters depth, sandy bottom with scattered clay. No wrecks charted, no cables, no restricted areas, no historical significance that anyone knew of, just sea. We arrived in mild conditions. The weather had eased overnight, and Henriksen brought the vessel to a slow drift over the coordinates. He had the echo sounder running. Dahl was watching the display. The bottom was flat, 62 meters, unremarkable. But Dahl said, "There's something." And he adjusted the gain, and Henriksen leaned in, and I was on the bridge because I'd been sent up to bring coffee, and I saw it too. There was a return on the sounder, a hard return, sitting maybe 2 meters above the seabed, compact, maybe 4 meters across, distinct from the surrounding bottom, which was soft sediment reading with a fuzzy, dispersed echo. This was sharp, metallic, or stone. Rock? Henriksen asked. Not charted, Dahl said, and rocks don't sit 2 meters proud of a sand bottom at this depth without being on the chart. Henriksen ordered a slow pass in a box pattern. We crossed the object from 4 directions. It was there every time. Same shape, same height, same hardness, sitting alone on a featureless plain of seabed 62 meters down. He logged it, noted the coordinates, made no conclusions, and we went back to our regular schedule. 8 days later, HF-0447 was off station again. Same coordinates. When we recovered it, the GPS logger confirmed the same instantaneous jump, no intermediate positions, and the camera Henriksen's personal camera had captured 43 minutes of footage in total. 43 minutes of motion-activated recording over 8 days. Most of it was waves, the rocking of the buoy triggering the sensor, sea spray, a gull landing on the lantern bracket. Normal. But there were 4 frames captured at 3:22 on the 6th night that showed the water surface around the buoy illuminated from below. Not the lantern, not moonlight, something beneath the buoy, radiating a pale, diffuse light upward through the water column. The light was steady in 2 frames, slightly brighter in the 3rd, and gone in the 4th. The timestamps were 30 seconds apart. 2 minutes of illumination, minimum, from below. There was no corresponding position change on that night. The buoy remained on station. The light was beneath it at its assigned position, not at the destination coordinates, at home. Henriksen showed this footage only to Kleven and Dahl initially. Kleven told Rui, and Rui told me within the hour. That's how small ships work. You cannot keep a secret in 38 meters of living space. By dinner, all 8 of us had seen the footage on Henriksen's laptop. The reactions had divided us. Strom, the engineer, said it was bioluminescence. Simple, common in these waters at certain times of year. Nothing unusual. He went back to the engine room. Falk, the youngest of the ABs, was visibly uncomfortable. He asked Henriksen whether we could request a different vessel, take over the HF-0447 tasking. Henriksen said no. Mikkelsen said nothing. But I noticed he started sleeping with his cabin light on. I only know this because our cabins share a bulkhead, and I could see the line of light under the connecting door. As for me, I felt something I couldn't name at first. It wasn't fear exactly. It was the feeling of recognizing that you've been asking the wrong question. I'd been asking how the buoy was moving, but after seeing that light, I started asking why it was coming back, because that was the part nobody had addressed. The buoy wasn't just relocating, it was relocating to the same spot, the same exact spot, over and over, with its mooring intact, as if something at those coordinates was collecting it. And the light was at the buoy's home position, as if something was visiting there too, coming to where the buoy was supposed to be, looking for it. I said this at dinner. I said, what if something at those coordinates wants the buoy there? And what if something is also coming to where we keep putting it back? Henriksen didn't respond. He looked at his plate, but Dahl said quietly, that implies 2 locations are connected, or that something moves between them. Nobody ate much after that. The next deployment was on the 19th of November. Henriksen made a decision that split the crew's opinion sharply. He deployed HF-0447 at its correct station as required, but he also took a spare buoy from our deck stock, an undesignated reserve. No AIS, no lantern, just a hull with lifting bridle, and he deployed it at the other coordinates: 61 degrees, 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees, 04.7 minutes east, directly over the uncharted sounder contact, 40 meters of chain on a spare sinker. He told Dahl to log it as temporary survey marker pending investigation. His reasoning, as he explained it to me during a smoke break on the boat deck, was simple. If something keeps putting the buoy there, let's see what happens when there's already something there. He mounted the camera again on HF-0447 at its home station, and he put the GPS logger on the spare buoy at the anomalous coordinates. 6 days. That's how long it took. On day 6, HF-0447 moved again. Same jump, same coordinates. The GPS logger on the spare buoy showed it remained in position throughout. So now we had 2 buoys at 61 degrees, 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees, 04.7 minutes east. The spare, which had been placed there deliberately, and HF-0447, which had arrived on its own. When we got there to recover HF-0447, both buoys were floating within 8 meters of each other, upright, stable, chains vertical, as if they belonged there, as if they'd been deployed by professionals. But the camera footage, that was different this time. The motion-activated recording had captured 12 minutes of footage on the night of the transit. At 2:47, the camera activated and showed the sea surface around HF-0447 in its home position. The water was calm, visibility was good, a half moon above the cloud layer, and rising from the water within perhaps 3 meters of the buoy's hull, there was a shape. I need to be precise about this, because I have watched this footage more than 40 times, and I am not certain what I saw. It was dark, darker than the water around it. It rose vertically out of the sea surface to a height of perhaps 1.5 meters. It was narrow, less than half a meter across. It did not splash. The water did not break around it. It rose the way a periscope does, except it was not a periscope. It was not smooth. Its edges were irregular. It appeared, and I want to be careful with this word, organic, like a limb, like a neck, like something briefly surfacing to observe. It was in frame for 90 seconds across 3 consecutive captures. In the first, it was rising. In the second, it was still oriented toward the buoy. In the third, it was descending. There was no fourth activation until dawn, when wave motion triggered the sensor again. Henriksen reported the uncharted obstruction to the navigation authority. That was all he reported to sounder contact. He did not mention the footage. He did not mention the light. He did not mention the buoy's repeated relocation behavior beyond what was already in the logs. I asked him why. Because they'll take me off the vessel, he said, and then whoever replaces me will have no context, no continuity, and they'll keep deploying that buoy. I didn't understand his concern fully at the time. I understand it now. What Henriksen was afraid of was not the thing in the water. What he was afraid of was the cycle continuing without anyone watching it, who understood what the cycle meant. Because he believed, and I came to believe this too, that the buoy's movement was not random, it was not malfunction, it was not drift, it was retrieval. Something was taking the buoy and placing it at specific coordinates repeatedly, and the increasing frequency suggested an increasing urgency. First time, 9 days. Second time, 7 days. Third time, 15 days, but we left it longer before checking. Fourth time, 8 days. Fifth time, 6 days. The intervals were shortening, and the light at the home station, the underwater illumination suggested that whatever was retrieving the buoy was also coming to where it had been, looking for it, finding it, taking it. Henriksen asked a question one evening in the chart room that I've not been able to stop thinking about. He said, "What if the buoy is marking something for it? What if putting it at those coordinates isn't theft, it's signaling? It takes our marker and uses it to mark something for us." Dahl looked at the chart. At 61 degrees, 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees, 04.7 minutes east, open water, 62 meters, an uncharted hard contact 2 meters above the seabed. "Marking what?" Dahl asked. Henriksen didn't answer. The authority eventually sent a notice to mariners about the uncharted obstruction. Standard hydrographic update. A small diamond on the chart. The kind of thing that most vessels would never notice or care about. And they told us to continue maintaining HF-0447 at its assigned station. No further investigation was authorized. Budget. Priorities. A buoy that keeps going off station is an annoyance, not an emergency. We redeployed on the 28th of November. This time, Henriksen ran the echo sounder over the home station, 61 degrees, 28.3 minutes north, 004 degrees, 52.1 minutes east before we dropped the sinker. He'd never done that before. There was no reason to. The home station was in a charted channel. The depth was known. The bottom was known. Except it wasn't. Not anymore. The sounder showed the same kind of hard return, a compact, distinct echo 2 meters above the seabed, directly beneath where HF-0447's sinker was supposed to sit, the same signature as the object at the other coordinates, the same size, the same height. There were now 2 of them. Dahl cross-referenced the sounder records from our previous visits to the home station. On the 14th of September, before any of this began, the bottom had been clean, flat sand, no contacts. Whatever was there now had arrived between September and November. Henriksen deployed the buoy anyway. He had no authority to refuse. The sinker went down. The chain paid out. HF-0447 sat on station, flashing red, marking the channel edge, exactly as intended. And beneath it, less than 40 meters below the waterline, something sat on the seabed that hadn't been there 2 months ago. I asked Henriksen if he was going to report it. "Report what?" he said. "An echo sounder contact, in a position I have no official reason to be scanning. They'll ask why I was running the sounder over a standard buoy station. They'll ask what I'm looking for, and I don't have an answer that keeps me in command of this vessel." He was right. The system doesn't accommodate mysteries. It accommodates faults, repairs, and replacements. If you can't name the problem in a drop-down menu, it doesn't exist. December arrived. The weather turned vicious. Force 8, 9, sometimes 10. We were confined to port for days at a time. The monitoring system showed HF-0447 on station throughout. It didn't move during the storms. Whatever was taking it apparently respected meteorology, or at least timing. On the 12th of December, a calm window, we went out for routine maintenance on 4 other buoys in the zone. Henriksen routed us past the anomalous coordinates 61 degrees 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees 04.7 minutes east on our transit, just to check. The spare buoy we left there was still in place, still floating, still upright, but the echo sounder showed something different now. The original hard contact was still there, 4 meters across, 2 meters above the seabed, but there were 2 more, smaller, flanking it, each perhaps 2 meters wide, same hard signature, same height. 3 objects on the seabed where 3 months ago there had been nothing. Clevin was on the bridge. He saw the sounder display. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, "They're growing?" I don't think that's the right word. I think they were arriving, but the effect was the same. Whatever was down there was multiplying, and whatever was taking our buoy wanted us to know where. By mid-December, I started having trouble sleeping. Not nightmares, nothing so dramatic, just the persistent feeling of being watched from below. I know how that sounds. I was living on a vessel that floats on 60 meters of water. There's always something below you, but this was different. This was the awareness that something below you knows you're there, knows your schedule, knows when you'll come back. Falk requested a transfer on the 15th of December. Henriksen granted it without argument. Falk was replaced by a new AB, Solheim, who had no context and was told nothing beyond the standard briefing. I watched Solheim come aboard with his kit bag and his eager handshake, and I felt something I can only describe as guilt, because by then I knew Henriksen had no intention of stopping. He was going to keep deploying that buoy, keep recovering it, keep monitoring, keep recording. He was building a data set, methodical, patient, the kind of long observation that precedes understanding. And he needed us, needed a crew willing to keep going back to do it. On the 19th of December, HF-0447 moved again, 4 days this time, the shortest interval yet. The camera captured 3 separate instances of the shape surfacing beside the buoy during those 4 days. Each time slightly taller, each time slightly longer above water. In the final capture, it remained visible for 4 minutes and 12 seconds. In that footage, and I will describe this as clearly as I can, the shape extended approximately 2 meters above the waterline. It was dark, but not uniformly so. There were variations in its surface, texture, not scales, not skin, something between mineral and tissue, and at its apex there was a formation that could have been, I do not say was, I say could have been, a sensor of some kind, something oriented, something that tracked. It was facing the buoy, it was facing the lantern, the flashing red light, and then it descended, and within 15 minutes, the GPS logger jumped. The buoy was at the other coordinates. Henriksen watched that footage alone in his cabin. I know because Dahl told me the skipper didn't come to dinner, and when Dahl brought him food, the laptop was open, and Henriksen was rewinding the same 3 seconds over and over, the moment of descent, the moment the shape went below the surface. The next morning, Henriksen called a meeting on the bridge. All hands. He stood at the chart table and spoke calmly, as he always did, but there was something in his voice I hadn't heard before, a flatness, like someone delivering a eulogy for something not yet dead. He said, "I want to give everyone the option to leave at the end of this rotation. No judgment, no questions. Solheim accepted Solheim. You deserve to know what's happening, and I'll brief you privately after this. For the rest of you, I intend to continue the deployment and monitoring pattern through January and into February. I believe we're observing something genuine, something significant, and I believe it's becoming more active. If anyone wants off, tell Dahl by end of day." Nobody spoke. Then Mikkelsen raised his hand and said, "What do you think it is?" Henriksen looked at the chart, at the 2 sets of coordinates, at the penciled notes he'd made in the margin. The sounder contacts, the intervals, the frequency. "I think something is building on the seabed," he said. "I think it wants to be found, and I think it's using our buoy, our navigation mark, as a signal. It takes our marker and places it above itself. It is doing what a buoy does. It is marking a position. It is saying, 'Here, look here.'" "And the light?" Clevin asked. "The thing that comes to the home station?" "That," Henriksen said, "is what comes to find the marker when we keep moving it back." The room went very quiet, because the implication was immediate and obvious. Every time we redeployed HF-0447 at its correct station, we were taking away the thing that was trying to mark something, and every time we did that, something came to find it, came to our assigned coordinates, came to the channel edge where commercial shipping passed daily, came looking, and now there was something on the seabed at the home station too. I didn't leave at the end of rotation. Neither did Clevin or Dahl or Strom. Mikkelsen left. Rui left. They were replaced by 2 new ABs who were told nothing, and I watched them come aboard the way I'd watched Solheim, and the guilt was worse the second time. January was dark. The days barely existed, 4 hours of gray twilight, and then night again. We deployed HF-0447 7 times that month. It moved 7 times. The interval stabilized at 3 to 4 days. The camera captured the shape on every transit night. It was growing taller, more defined, and on the 11th of January, for the first time, there were 2 of them, 2 shapes, rising from the water on either side of the buoy, bracketing it, oriented toward each other across the hull, as if the buoy were between them, as if they were reading it. The sounder contacts at both locations continued to multiply. By the 22nd of January, the home station showed 5 distinct objects on the seabed. The anomalous coordinates showed 7, all uniform, all 2 meters above the bottom, all hard returns, all arrived since September. Henriksen began keeping a separate log, handwritten, black notebook. He didn't share it with anyone, but I saw him writing in it constantly at the chart table, during meals, on the bridge wing during transits. His handwriting got smaller over the weeks, more cramped, as if the information was compressing, becoming denser, requiring less space, but more attention. On the 3rd of February, the Navigation Authority sent an email requesting an explanation for the excessive maintenance visits to HF-0447. Their data showed we were visiting its station on average every 4 days. This was far outside normal operational parameters. They asked if there was an unresolved equipment fault. Henriksen replied that the buoy was experiencing recurrent position drift, requiring repeated repositioning. He did not elaborate. The authority responded with a form suggesting we requisition a replacement buoy. Henriksen Requisition 1 received it and deployed it at the home station alongside HF-0447, 2 buoys where one should be. 3 days later, both of them were at the anomalous coordinates, both chains intact, both sinkers attached, both floating side by side above the seabed contacts as if placed by an engineering team with GPS precision. That was when Henriksen laughed. Standing on the bridge wing in the February dark, watching the 2 red buoys floating ahead of us in the searchlight beam, he laughed. It was a short sound, not joyful, the laugh of a man who has run an experiment and received an answer so unambiguous that it eliminates every comfortable interpretation. "It's not about this specific buoy," he said. "It's anything we put there, anything we give it to work with." We recovered both buoys. Henriksen deployed only HF-0447 back at the home station, but this time he did something different. He removed the lantern. He unbolted the LED unit, disconnected the solar panel, and stowed them below. He deployed the buoy dark. No light, no flash. "Let's see," he said. "If it still wants it." It didn't move. 14 days. 21. 30. HF-0447 sat at its home station, dark and unlighted, and didn't move. The shore monitoring system flagged the lantern outage repeatedly. Henriksen reported it as a solar panel failure awaiting parts. The authority accepted this. On the 32nd day, Henriksen reinstalled the lantern, reconnected the solar panel. The LED began flashing again, 2-second red, visible for 3 nautical miles. 2 nights later, the buoy was at the anomalous coordinates. It wanted the light. Henriksen sat with this knowledge for several days. He didn't discuss it. He wrote in his notebook. He ran the echo sounder over both locations repeatedly, watching the contacts. They hadn't grown during the 30 days the buoy was dark, but within a week of the light returning and the buoy being taken again, 2 new contacts appeared at the anomalous coordinates, as if the light was a signal to resume, as if it was calling others. I found Henriksen on the bridge wing at 2 in the morning on the 14th of March. He was staring south-southeast, toward the anomalous coordinates, though you couldn't see anything at that distance in the dark. I asked him what he was doing. "Counting," he said. "Counting what?" "Possibilities." He didn't look at me. "If I report this truthfully, the footage, the sounder data, the light experiments, 2 things happen. They take me off the vessel for psychological evaluation, and they send someone else who doesn't understand, who will keep the buoy lit and in position, who will keep feeding it markers. And if you don't report it, then I'm the only one who decides when it gets fed." This was the moment I understood what Henriksen had become. Not a captain managing an anomaly, a keeper, a gatekeeper. He was controlling the flow of information upward because he believed rationally or not that his ongoing presence and his understanding of the situation was the only check on whatever was accumulating on the seabed. That if he left, the system would simply keep providing what the thing wanted: lighted buoys, navigation markers, beacons. I asked him one more question that night, the question that has haunted me since. What happens when there are enough of them down there? He turned and looked at me. In the dim, red glow of the bridge instruments, his face was impossible to read, but he said, Have you ever seen a harbor from above, all the navigation marks leading in? I nodded. That's what they're building, he said. A channel, marked on both sides, leading somewhere. They need the lights because they need us to see it. When it's done, we'll be able to follow it in. He went below. I stood on the bridge wing for another hour, watching the dark, thinking about what a channel is, what it's for, who it guides, and whether the things rising from the water beside our buoy were placing markers or whether they were pilots waiting at the entrance for the vessel they'd been signaling to arrive. I left the Stellavag at the end of March. I told Henriksen I was done. He didn't argue. He shook my hand on the key and fluoro and said, "You did well." Nothing more. I went back to Aberdeen, took a job on a harbor tug, short runs, shallow water, nothing deeper than 15 meters beneath my keel. I thought I was done with it, but I still have access to the AIS tracking website. Anyone does, it's public, and I check HF-0447's position every morning. Every morning. It's on station today, has been for 11 days, but 3 weeks ago, it spent 2 days at the anomalous coordinates before being recovered, and last week, a new notice to mariners was published for the Offshore approaches. I read it carefully. It lists a new charted obstruction, then another, then another. 7 individual obstructions now charted in a roughly linear pattern between the two sets of coordinates, between HF-0447's home station and the place it keeps going. 7 objects arranged in a line on the seabed, spaced at almost regular intervals, connecting 2 points, a line of markers, a channel. I don't know what Henriksen is doing now. I don't know if he's still on the Stellavag. I emailed Dahl twice and got no response. I tried calling Cleven and the number was disconnected. The Stellavag is still listed on the authorities' vessel register, still active, still contracted for buoy maintenance in the Halsfjord zone. But 2 days ago, I looked at the AIS tracker and saw something that made me sit down very carefully in my kitchen in Aberdeen and stare at the screen until the light outside changed from morning to afternoon. There's a new buoy listed on the tracker. Designation HF-0512, deployed at 61 degrees 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees 04.7 minutes east, at the anomalous coordinates, officially charted, officially deployed, flashing red, marking the entrance to something that the navigation authority has apparently decided exists. Someone put a lighted buoy there on purpose. Someone decided that what's down there warrants marking, that it's real, that it's a feature, that vessels should know it's there. And I don't know if that was Henriksen's decision or the authorities or something else entirely, but I know what a lighted buoy at those coordinates means to whatever has been taking them there for 6 months. It means they don't have to come get it anymore. It means the light is permanent now. And every night when I close my eyes in my flat 300 miles from that water, I think about what Henriksen said, about channels, about what a line of markers between 2 points is for, about what's at the other end, the end we haven't found yet, the end the channel leads from. And I think about those shapes, 2 meters tall, then taller, then more of them, rising beside the light, reading it, waiting. I think they're pilots. And I think the vessel they're waiting for hasn't arrived yet, but the channel is almost marked. And I think about the notices the mariners, because I still read them. Every week, the authority publishes updates for the Halsfjord zone, and I read them the way a former smoker watches someone light a cigarette with revulsion and longing in equal measure. And over the past 3 months, the notices have been telling a story that nobody seems to be reading the way I read it. In April, 2 additional obstructions were charted along the line. That brought the total to 9, spaced roughly 1.4 nautical miles apart, running from 61 degrees, 28.3 minutes north, 004 degrees, 52.1 minutes east, to 61 degrees, 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees, 04.7 minutes east, a straight bearing of 147 degrees, southeast, 12 nautical miles, 9 objects on the seabed, evenly distributed, forming a corridor. In early May, a temporary notice was issued redirecting commercial traffic in the outer approach channel. Vessels above 10,000 deadweight tonnage were advised to use the western approach instead. No explanation beyond ongoing hydrographic survey. I checked the usual sources, the maritime forums, the port authority bulletins. Nobody seemed to know what the survey was for. Nobody seemed to be asking. But there is one detail in the main notice that stopped me cold. A new buoy had been deployed. HF-05-13, positioned at 61 degrees, 25.1 minutes north, 004 degrees, 58.4 minutes east, midway along the line, flashing red, port hand lateral, as if the line wasn't just being charted, it was being marked, officially, with aids to navigation, with lighted buoys. Someone was building the channel. I told myself it was Henriksen, that he'd convinced the authority somehow, that his data had finally been taken seriously and they were investigating properly, that this was institutional response, slow and bureaucratic, but rational, that professionals were handling it. But then I received the email. It was from an address I didn't recognize, a Norwegian domain, but not the navigation authority's standard format. The subject line was empty. The body contained only a file, a PDF, and a single line of text. You were on the Stellavag. You should see this. I almost deleted it. Almost. But something in the phrasing, the specificity, whoever sent it knew my connection to the vessel. That's not public information. The crew roster of a contracted buoy tender isn't published anywhere. I opened the PDF. It was a scan of a handwritten document, 12 pages. The handwriting was cramped, small, achingly familiar. It was Henriksen's notebook, or part of it. The pages were dated from mid-February through the end of March, the period after I left, but before whatever happened next. I'll tell you what was in those pages. I'll tell you as precisely as I can, because precision is what Henriksen would have wanted. He was a precise man. The entries from late February document what he calls the reciprocal phase. After I left, the buoy continued its pattern of relocation every 3 to 4 days. But Henriksen notes a change. The shapes, he calls them risers in the notebook, were no longer only appearing at the home station. They began surfacing at intermediate points along the line, between the 2 coordinates, as if checking the spaces in between, surveying. His entry from the 4th of March reads, ran sounder along full bearing tonight, contacts now at 11 positions, spacing consistent, 1.38 nanometers average. Line is complete between endpoints, Whatever was arriving has arrived. They are in position. The 5th of March, HF-0447 not taken tonight. First time in weeks. It stayed on station for more than 4 days. 5 days now. Lantern still lit, still flashing, but no retrieval. As if the task is done. As if it doesn't need to signal anymore. The 6th of March. Ran sounder over home station. Contact still present beneath buoy, but it's larger. Was 4 meters across in November. Now reads approximately 8. Growing outward, not upward. Spreading laterally along the seabed. Merging with adjacent contact to the southeast. The 7th of March. Same at anomalous coordinates. Contacts there also expanding, merging. The individual objects are connecting. What was 11 separate points is becoming a continuous feature, a ridge, a line, a structure. The 8th of March, and this is the entry that made me put my laptop down and walk to the window and stand there watching the harbor for 20 minutes before I could continue reading. Depth change. Shallowest point along the line now reads 58 meters. Was 62 meters in September. The structure is growing upward, slowly, but upward. At current rate, it will be detectable by surface vessels within 18 months. Within 5 years, it will be a navigation hazard. Within 10, the sentence is unfinished. He moved on to the next entry. The 9th of March. Dahl asked me today what happens when it reaches the surface. I told him I don't know, but I think I do know. I think what reaches the surface won't be stone. I think what reaches the surface will be the same thing as the risers, the same material, the same presence. I think the structure on the seabed is the body, and the risers are its limbs, and when the body reaches the surface, the limbs won't need to rise anymore because it will already be there, permanently, all of it. A continuous form 12 nautical miles long, breaking the surface of the Offshore approaches. I need to pause here because I want to be honest about what reading this did to me. I was sitting in my kitchen in Aberdeen. It was a Tuesday morning. I could hear traffic outside and seagulls and the ordinary, stupid sounds of a coastal city going about its business. And I was reading the private observations of a man I respected, a careful, experienced, unsentimental mariner describing what he believed was an organism growing across 12 nautical miles of seabed and rising toward the surface. And the worst part was that I believed him, not because of faith, because of the sounder data, because of the GPS logs, because of the footage I'd seen with my own eyes, because everything I'd witnessed aboard the Stellavag was consistent with exactly what he was describing. The notebook entries continue through March. They become more sporadic, shorter. Some are just numbers, coordinates, depths, timestamps. Others are observations. March 14th, light visible from bridge wing at night, subsurface, pale green, continuous glow along the bearing, not localized to one point anymore. The whole line is luminescent. March 17th, new crew cannot see it. Solheim looked where I pointed, said he saw nothing. Dark water, but Cleven sees it, Dahl sees it, Strom sees it. Only the new ones are blind to it, only the ones who weren't here from the beginning. March 19th, sound, very low frequency. Strom thinks it's cavitation from the propeller, but we're at anchor. Hull is vibrating at 7 to 14 hertz. Below hearing, but you feel it in your chest. Dahl is seasick for the first time in his career. March 22nd, Structure now reads 54 meters shallowest. 8 meters of growth in 3 weeks. Rate is accelerating. I have revised my timeline. Not 18 months, not 5 years, months. By autumn, if this continues, parts of the structure will be within 15 meters of the surface, within draft clearance for deep-hulled vessels. March 24th, made a decision. Will not report the depth change. If I report it, they will send a survey vessel. A survey vessel will bring people with equipment. They will map it. They will try to identify it. They will anchor above it, and I believe I have no evidence for this beyond instinct in 6 months of observation that proximity is what it wants, that attention is what feeds it, that the buoy was never about the buoy. The buoy was about bringing us here, making us look, making us come back again and again. And every time we come back, it grows. That entry is the one that broke something in me, because I thought about all the times we'd returned, all the recovery trips, all the deployments, all the sounder runs, all the nights spent on station above it. And I thought about Henriksen's camera, his GPS loggers, his experiments, his refusal to stop watching. He'd been feeding it. We all had. Every visit, every recovery, every pair of eyes on the sounder display, watching it grow. Every hour spent on station, a vessel and its crew floating 60 meters above something that grew when attended to. And he knew. By March, he knew. And he didn't stop. The last entries in the notebook are from the 28th and 29th of March. March 28th. Authority has approved the deployment of HF-0512 at the anomalous coordinates. I put in the request 6 weeks ago, did not explain why. Cited the charted obstruction and standard marking requirements. They approved without question. I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but I believe that if it's going to be marked regardless, if the structure is going to be found regardless, then it should be marked by someone who understands what the marking means, by someone who can watch, by someone who can decide when to stop. March 29th, deployed HF-0512 today, flashing red, 3 nautical miles visibility. At night, from the bridge, I can see both now. HF-0447 to the northwest, HF-0512 to the southeast. 2 red lights on the water, a bearing, a direction. You can line them up by eye. Transit marks, leading lights. If you put a vessel on the bearing and followed it, you would pass directly over every contact on the seabed. You would follow the channel from entrance to end, or from end to entrance, depending on which way you were going. That's the last entry in the scanned document. The PDF ends there. I sat with it for 3 days. I didn't sleep well. I kept getting up to check the AIS tracker, watching HF-0447 and HF-0512 sitting at their positions, steady, on station, lit. And I kept thinking about what Henriksen had written about transit marks, about leading lights. For anyone who doesn't know, transit marks are pairs of markers that, when aligned visually, indicate a safe course. You see the front mark and the rear mark. You line them up, and you know you're on the right bearing. They're used for harbor approaches, for narrow channels, for passages where deviation from the correct line means grounding or collision. 2 buoys, one at each end of a 12 nautical mile line, flashing the same color, the same character. If you were a vessel approaching from the southeast from open ocean, and you saw those two lights align, you would know the bearing, you would know the direction, you would know where the channel ran, and you would follow it in. I emailed the anonymous sender, asked who they were, asked how they got the notebook, asked about Henriksen. No response for 4 days, then a single reply. Henriksen is still on the Stellavag. The vessel is currently on station at 61 degrees 25.1 minutes north, 004 degrees 58.4 minutes east. It has been there for 19 days. It is not moving. Its AIS is broadcasting normally. There has been no communication from the vessel in 11 days. The authority has been unable to raise them on any frequency. I checked the AIS tracker. The Stellavag was exactly where the email said. Midway along the line, directly over the midpoint of the structure. Stationary. AIS showing 0 speed, 0 course. Anchored, or drifting so slowly that the system read it as stopped. 19 days in one position. No communication for 11, and nobody had gone to check. I emailed back, "Why hasn't the authority sent someone?" The reply came within minutes. They did. The vessel that was sent reported the Stellavag on station, lights on, no distress signals, hailed on VHF, no response. The vessel was instructed to approach and board. The master refused. Said conditions were unsuitable. Sea state 2, wind force 3. Conditions were fine. He refused anyway. The authority is preparing a second attempt. I asked, "Why are you telling me this?" The response, "Because you left, and I need to know if that's still possible." I didn't understand what that meant. Not then. I wrote back, asking for clarification, for identification, for context. No further replies came. The address bounced 3 days later, mailbox not found, as if it had never existed. But I kept watching the tracker. The Stellavag sat at 61 degrees, 25.1 minutes north, 004 degrees, 58.4 minutes east for another 6 days after that last email. 25 days total in one position. And then, on a Thursday morning, I remember because I was eating breakfast, when I checked the vessel's AIS position had changed. It had moved, not far, 300 meters to the southeast, still on the line, still on the bearing between the two buoys, but it had moved, and over the following week, it continued to move, slowly, incremental, 300 meters per day, sometimes less, always southeast, always along the channel. The Stellavag was following the line, at walking pace, with no communication, no acknowledgement, just its AIS pinging away, broadcasting its position every few seconds as it crept along the bearing toward the anomalous coordinates. It took 9 days to cover the remaining distance. On the 9th day, the Stellavag's AIS position coincided with HF-0512, the endpoint, 61 degrees, 21.8 minutes north, 005 degrees, 04.7 minutes east. And there it stopped. And then it kept going, southeast, past the endpoint, past the charted obstructions, past the last known buoy, into open water where nothing was marked and nothing was charted, and the depth dropped from 60 to 100 to 200 meters within a few miles as the continental shelf fell away. I watched it for 6 more hours. It moved at the same steady pace, 300 meters at a time, southeast, deeper water, and then at 22:41 on a Wednesday evening, the AIS signal stopped, not faded, not intermittent, stopped. One moment the Stellavag was a small triangle on my screen at 61 degrees, 18.2 minutes north, 005 degrees, 11.8 minutes east, making 300 meters per southeast tick. The next refresh, gone. No position, no vessel, no signal. It has not reappeared. That was 31 days ago. The Navigation Authority has listed the Stellavag as overdue, position unknown. I've checked every day. There's no maritime casualty report. No search and rescue operation announced. No news coverage. A 42-meter vessel with 8 crew vanished from AIS in the middle of a shipping lane, and there is nothing, no mention anywhere, as if the system has simply accepted the gap and closed around it. But the buoys are still there. HF-0447, HF-0512, HF-0513 at the midpoint, all on station, all lit, all flashing red, marking a channel that now has no tender, no maintenance crew, and no explanation for what lies beneath it. And last week, 6 days ago, I checked the notices the mariners one final time. There was a new entry for the Offshore zone. A single line, no elaboration, no context. New aid to navigation established, HF-0514, position 61 degrees 18.2 minutes north, 005 degrees 11.8 minutes east, flashing red, 2 seconds. The coordinates where the Stellavag disappeared. Someone deployed a buoy there, at the exact position where the vessel's signal died, and lit it, and gave it a designation, and entered it into the official record as if it were the most natural thing in the world, as if the channel didn't end where I thought it ended, as if it continues southeast, deeper, beyond the shelf. 4 buoys now, a line of 4 lighted marks extending 12, 15, now nearly 20 nautical miles into deep water, each one flashing the same red sequence, each one marking something beneath it, each one saying, "Here," to whatever is looking. And I keep thinking about what Henriksen said about channels, about how they guide vessels in, about leading lights and transit marks, about following a bearing from open water into shelter. But Henriksen was wrong about one thing. He thought the channel was being built for us to follow in. He thought it was an invitation. But I watched the Stellavag follow that line, and it didn't go in. It went out, southeast, away from shore, away from the fjord, away from shallow water, and into the deep. The channel doesn't lead in, it leads out. And I think whatever is building it isn't inviting us to come find something. I think it's marking the path it intends to take. I think the marks are for it, for when it's ready to move, to follow the lights from deep water, northwest, up the continental shelf, along the line of buoys, into the approach channel, into the fjord. And when it arrives, it will find the channel perfectly marked, every turn lit, every hazard noted, every aid to navigation in place, maintained and functioning by the very people whose job it is to make passages safe. We built it a road, and we lit it, and we can't stop, because the system requires the buoys to be maintained. The system requires the lights to stay on, and nobody in that system knows what the lights are for anymore. Nobody except me and Henriksen, wherever Henriksen is, and whoever sent me those pages. I check the tracker every morning. The buoys are on station. The lights are lit. The channel is open. And some mornings, when the gray Aberdeen dawn is just starting to brighten over the harbor, I find myself looking east, out past the breakwater, past the pilot station, past the sea buoys, toward open water, And I think I can see it. Not a light, not a shape, nothing I could photograph or prove. Just a quality in the water out there. A darkness that isn't weather. A stillness that isn't calm. Something at the far end of its own marked channel, waiting for conditions